Let me cover a few areas today. Let's start from where we are. What are our considerations for the safe resumption of economic activities? What are the measures that companies and workers must adopt? The sectors which will open or resume after the 2nd of June, and also what are our considerations for the next phase. Let me start with where we are now. Today, the majority of workers who can work from home are doing so. And today, we have about 17% of our workers working on site to provide the range of essential services for our society. So during this period, all our domestic essential services continue to operate. We continue to fulfill our responsibility to the global supply chains. For example, key players in the precision manufacturing, biomedical, petrochemical sectors, and accompanying supply chains have all been able to function during this period. We have also maintained all our air, land, and sea links for the world, and also to allow essential supplies to flow through us. So that's where we are today. From the 2nd of June, we have 3 considerations for the progressive resumption of economic activities. First, we want to make sure that the health and well-being of our workers are taken care of. Second, we will progressively first resume those activities that have a lower risk setting in a controlled environment. For example, those that have limited or no interactions with the public, and those sectors that are in a static control environment that can put in the necessary safe management measures, which I will elaborate soon. The third consideration is that those sectors will be the critical sectors with significant economic linkages, both domestically and externally. And this will allow us to continue to trade with the rest of the world to secure our essential supplies. So these are the 3 considerations: the health and well-being of our workers, the risk setting of the workplace, and the criticality of the sectors to maintain our production capacities and linkages with the world. So from the 2nd of June, we will continue the maximum work from home arrangements. So those who are already working from home should continue to work from home. Only personnel who require the use of machinery and specialized terminals will be able to return to their factories or workplace. And people who need to complete the legal documentation will also be able to return to their workplace to do that. Workers who need infrequent access to the workplace to obtain information or materials can do so on a time-based exemptions. The time-based exemptions are already in existence today. Now let me touch on what the companies and workers must do, and the preparation starts from today until the 2nd of June, where we resume. So there are 5 things which we would like to have our companies do in preparation for the resumption of economic activities in phase 1. First is to put in place a safe work environment. This includes putting in place safe distancing measures at work and at rest areas. It includes the proper supervision of activities to minimize the need for physical meetings and interactions, the proper use of a contact tracing system. Examples would be safe entry and trace together. And you will, of course, need to meet the requisite cleanliness and hygiene standards. So that is the first category of what we call a safe work environment. Second, we'll need the companies and the workers to put in place the safe transport arrangements. We would strongly encourage companies to stagger their work hours. For example, those in office settings that are not linked to international trade may wish to consider starting their work after 10 a.m. to help us minimize the congestion load during the peak hours in the morning. Third, we would like all companies to consider the safe cohort arrangements. to avoid the cross-deployment of staff between different teams, both in and outside work. Fourth, we'll need the companies to take responsibilities and an active interest on the safe accommodation for their workers. So this will ensure that beyond work, the health and well-being of the workers are well taken care of. Last but not least, on the fifth is for all companies to encourage their workers to be disciplined and not socialize or congregate beyond the workplace. We really need the companies and the workers to work together and take joint responsibility for this, because, as Minister Gan said, we want a progressive resumption of work. We will not want a situation whereby we start and stop moving back and forth between the different settings. If there is an outbreak in a particular company, we will have no choice but to shut down either that operations or that part of the operations. So it is in our collective interest, it's in the interest of business continuity for us to take all the 5 measures that I mentioned: the safe work arrangement, safe transport arrangement, safe cohorting, safe accommodation, and also safe social interactions. So we will work with the respective companies and the trade associations to put in place the safe working measures. For the respective sectors which had unique working arrangements, the respective trade associations can also advise their companies to take on the additional measures as necessary for the respective sectors. So from 2nd of June onwards, we expect about a third of our workers to be able to resume work on site, and then the rest of the workers will continue to work from home. This will allow more than 3/4 of our economy to resume their normal operations. So from the 2nd of June, we will issue class exemptions for businesses that are allowed to open. There's no additional approvals required. And I'll give some examples of the sectors that will resume operations from the 2nd of June. This includes manufacturing and production, finance and insurance, wholesale trade, excluding those with retail shop fronts, transport and storage, professional services. We will also allow some selected services to open, for example, motor vehicle servicing and aircon servicing. Now, for a more thorough breakdown of the sectors that can resume operations, companies can refer to the covid.gobusiness.gov.sg website. Companies will be required to submit their manpower details within 2 weeks of resuming operations. So they will need to submit the number of workers who need to be on site. The information and website for the submission will be made known next week. I'd just like to say that we urge all companies to practice good management practices so that they minimize the number of workers required on site to the smallest number possible. And we will benchmark the various companies across the same industries and sector. If the manpower numbers are excessive, we will reach out to the company to understand their requirements and to review how we can better support the company and adopt a higher telecommuting workforce. Now let me touch a bit on the next phase. Businesses who are not included in phase 1 resumption on 2nd of June should also actively prepare for subsequent resumption. There are 2 subcategories. Some will need to put in place additional measures in order for us to resume business operations. For example, those in the retail sector with a high B2C touchpoints or F&B will need to start thinking about the new measures that we can put in to have a safe resumption of activities. To this end, there's already a task force working on this with SMS Cheong Tat guiding them. So the SRA, Singapore Retailer Association, the Restaurant Association of Singapore, they are in this task force actively looking at measures that can, additional measures that can be put in place to allow the safe resumption of those activities. Then the second subcategory will be those that will require a new business model because their pre-COVID activities are unlikely to resume as per normal. So these include those in the social entertainment sector. But we have been very encouraged that over the last 1-2 months, we have seen a lot of new initiatives whereby many companies and businesses adopted the digital technologies to not only retain their businesses, but also to expand their market shares. And between MCI and MTI, we will strengthen the efforts to help our companies to digitalize their business processes so that they can emerge stronger from this. So, as Minister Gan have mentioned, our ability to resume operations for the rest in the subsequent phase will depend first on the overall infection control, and second, the ability of our businesses to develop the new necessary support measures soonest. MTI will work with the respective trade associations and chambers to put those in place those plans in the meantime. We will also have the relevant support measures to support those companies that are unable to resume their operations on the 2nd of June. Let me conclude by saying that I'd like to thank all the businesses for their understanding. It has been trying and challenging times over the last few weeks. Many of the businesses have their operations disrupted. Many of them have put in place new measures in order to sustain their businesses and keep their workers, and there will be more challenges along the way. But we want to assure the business community that we'll continue to walk this journey with them, not just to put in place measures to tie over the short-term difficulties, but just as importantly, to put in place measures to help them to transit to the new normal or the new equilibrium.